Good evening, everyone. My name is Breanna Ngo, and I'll be reading my piece, Scrambled Egg Pancakes. It starts on page 53. My grandpa and I were always undeniably close. From the earliest memory I have of him up until the last, I can't think of a time where he wasn't saying or doing something that made me laugh. My Yitzi, Grandpa and Mom, and I spent almost all of my childhood together. My parents and I lived with my grandparents until I was 5 years old. Both of my parents worked, so I spent most of my days with my grandparents as my primary caretakers. Once I started going to school, my grandma started working, which left me and Grandpa together in the afternoons after school. These afternoons held the best memories I have with my Yitzi, and of these memories is the time he made me scrambled egg pancakes. Up until first grade, Yitzi would pick me up from school. Sometimes we would go to Jack in the Box for lunch after school, but most of the time, we'd go back home and eat leftovers from dinner we had the night before, or he'd cook something for me to eat. After we had lunch, we'd spend the rest of the afternoon together in his real estate office, he taking calls and speaking in the 5 different languages he knew, and I drawing or coloring until Mom picked me up. On one afternoon, much like our usual afternoons, we decided to go home to eat lunch. As Grandpa heated up leftovers, I spotted a box of pancake mix. I don't really remember who bought the pancake mix and how long it had been sitting there for, but I do remember how desperately I wanted Yitzi to make pancakes for me. Because my grandpa almost always agreed to whatever I wanted as a child, I asked him to make the pancakes nicely at first. He laughed and dismissed the idea, and he said he had no idea how to make them. Being a hard-headed little girl, I used one of the dining room chairs to stand on as I reached for the pancake box on top of the fridge. He helped me bring down the box, and I showed him that the recipe on how to make the pancakes were right there on the box. Now he really had no excuse to get out of making pancakes, so he grabbed a huge silver bowl for him and sat patiently at the dinner table for my fluffy, light brown circles for lunch. As I sat on the side of the table facing Yitzi, I watched him as he moved about the kitchen, finding each ingredient called for on the box. With his loud but light-hearted voice, he echoed each ingredient once he found it and added it quickly to the bowl, moving to the next until they were all thrown in. He then grabbed a fork to mix it all together. I'm not sure if this was because we didn't own a whisk in our Asian household or because he really had no idea what he was doing. Once he assumed the batter was ready, he grabbed a pan, the same pan we used to fry eggs in, and heated it up on the stove. He poured some of the batter into the pan, but then stood in front of the pan as the pancakes cooked, so I was unable to see what his next move was. Since I was already getting my way, I sat quietly and waiting for my pancakes as Yitzi would call out, "Almost ready," every 2 minutes. After being almost ready for what felt like forever, Yitzi finally brought over his final product proudly. Showing his straight teeth through his wide smile, he placed the plate in front of me. Okay, ready now, time to eat, young lady." But I didn't want to eat. I stared at the plate confused. I had no idea what it was. On the floral plate were little brown chunks scattered. I began to pout and cry. These weren't the perfect light, brown, fluffy circles I envisioned. They were little clumps of brown stuff that looked like scrambled eggs Grandma would make for me for breakfast to eat with my white rice. I was disappointed, to say the least, and Yitzi must have been too, as he adjusted his wide-frame glasses, untucked his shirt, and sat down next to me. He grabbed a fork and stuck it into one of the pancake bits. He brought it close to my mouth, but this made me want to cry even more. He quickly shoved the pancake into his mouth using his very animated voice, said, "Wow, so good. Okay, your turn." I'm not sure if it was because I was truly convinced that the pancakes were good or if I thought I had finally hurt my grandpa's feelings enough, but I hesitantly took a bite as he fed it into my mouth. Surprisingly, they weren't that bad. After I ate my first bite, Yitzi began laughing and said, "See, you like it, huh?" I gave him the nod of approval as I continued eating my scrambled egg pancakes. He then said something I still haven't forgotten to this day. Just because something seems bad doesn't always mean it's bad. You've got to give it the chance to show you the good it has to offer. I looked back down at the scrambled egg pancakes and ate every last bit of them. Yitzi taught me something I still hold with me to this day. Some things aren't as bad as they seem.